When I moved into my new apartment, I was excited to start a new chapter in my life. The building was quiet, the neighbors seemed considerate, and everything appeared perfect. First, it really was. I enjoyed the peace and quiet, but about a week in, I started noticing something strange. Every night, at the exact same time, I heard knocking coming from the wall. It was faint, like someone gently tapping with a fist or a hard object. At first, I didn't pay much attention. Maybe it was just a neighbor dropping something or moving furniture, but the knocks kept coming. Every night at precisely 3 a.m. At first, I tried to fall asleep through it, but curiosity got the better of me. One night, I knocked back. The sound stopped immediately, but the next night it started again right at 3 a.m. This time, I decided to visit the neighbor on the other side of the wall to figure out what was going on. I knocked on their door, but no one answered. I went downstairs to ask the building manager about the apartment. "That place has been empty for years," he told me. His words unsettled me, but I tried to find a rational explanation. Maybe he was mistaken, or someone had recently moved in without notifying him. The following night, I stayed up, waiting in silence. At exactly 3 a.m., the knocking began again. Slow, deliberate, rhythmic. I decided to record it on my phone to analyze it later. The next morning, I played back the recording. The sound was clear, too precise, almost as if someone was intentionally knocking in a deliberate pattern. I went back to the building manager to report it, but he assured me that no one lived in that apartment. He even showed me the keys, which he said hadn't been used in years. The thought began to consume me. What could possibly be making those sounds? I grabbed a few tools to inspect the wall between our apartments. When I started tapping on the wall, I noticed something odd. It sounded hollow, as if there was a hidden space behind it. I removed a few bricks, expecting to find an empty cavity or maybe some kind of maintenance passage. But instead, I found a small room. It had no windows, just bare walls and an old chair sitting in the middle. On the floor was a crumpled piece of paper. The paper had a single question written on it: "Can you hear me?" I stood frozen, my heart racing, when I suddenly heard a noise behind me that sent chills down my spine. I whipped around, but there was nothing there, just the open wall and the empty room. That's when I decided to call the police to investigate. When they arrived, I showed them the room behind the wall. But when we stepped inside, everything was gone. The chair, the paper, there was nothing there. Just an empty space. Now I don't know if what I heard was real or if my mind was playing tricks on me. But every night at 3 a.m., I still listen. And sometimes, I think I hear the knocking again. I rented an apartment in an old building on the outskirts of town. Nothing special, just a modest one-bedroom place with a long, narrow hallway leading to the bedroom. The only odd thing about it was the massive staircase behind a door at the end of the hallway. The landlord said it led to the attic, but the attic had been abandoned for years, and the entrance was sealed off. I didn't think much of it. Old houses are quirky like that. On the first night, I heard rustling behind the door. Faint, barely audible sounds, like someone cautiously stepping on the stairs. I told myself it was just the house settling, creaking wood, wind outside. But the sounds persisted. Every night, precisely at 3 in the morning, the rustling grew louder, turning into soft footsteps climbing the stairs. On the fourth night, curiosity got the better of me. I got up, approached the door, and listened. The footsteps stopped right behind the door. A cold chill ran down my spine. A thought flashed through my mind. If I opened the door, I'd see whoever was standing there. My hand gripped the doorknob, but I couldn't bring myself to turn it. The footsteps resumed, this time moving upward, toward the attic. The next day, I called the landlord and asked about the attic. He hesitated, then said the house was old and the noises were just rats. But his voice trembled, and he quickly changed the subject. I didn't believe him. I decided to go up to the attic myself. That night, when the rustling started again, I cautiously opened the door. A steep wooden staircase stretched into the darkness above. I took a step up. The stairs creaked under my weight. The footsteps above stopped, as if someone was listening. I climbed higher, my heart pounding. My phone's light revealed dusty steps. Suddenly, a cold draft brushed against my skin, and I heard a faint whisper. It was a woman's voice, but the words were indistinct, as if whispered from far away. At the top of the stairs, I saw a door. It was slightly ajar, and cold air seeped through the gap. I reached out to push it open, but suddenly it slammed shut with a deafening bang. The house shook, and the staircase beneath me creaked, as if someone was rushing down. I looked back, but no one was there. I ran back to my apartment, slammed the door, and pressed my back against the wall. The footsteps behind the door resumed, descending the stairs. I heard the wood groan under invisible steps. Then there was a knock, short, sharp. I didn't dare answer. The knock came again. Then a whisper, muffled, as if spoken directly into the keyhole.
Open, I'm waiting.
I stayed awake until dawn. The next day, I moved out without even packing. The landlord never called, never asked why. I think he already knew. I still hear that whisper in my dreams, calling me back. We moved into the apartment at the start of the semester. It wasn't perfect, but it was affordable, close to campus, and spacious enough for the two of us. The landlord, an older man with a reserved demeanor, didn't seem eager to chat. He showed us around quickly, his eyes darting around the place as if looking for something. I thought it was just his personality. Some people aren't good with social interactions. From the first night, the place felt off. It was subtle. A creaking floorboard when no one was walking, faint noises that I dismissed as the building settling. My girlfriend, Emma, noticed it too but laughed it off. Old buildings have character, she joked, but I could tell she was uneasy. We settled in, unpacking boxes and arranging furniture. There was a large bookshelf in the bedroom, screwed to the wall opposite the bed. It looked sturdy, though a bit out of place, like it was meant to hide something. We joked about secret passages and hidden treasures, but when I tried to move it to paint the wall behind, I found it was tightly secured. I didn't think much of it then. A week later, I woke up in the middle of the night. A faint rustling sound echoed in the dark, coming from behind the bookshelf. I stayed in bed, straining my ears, but the noise stopped. I convinced myself it was just the building creaking, but the sounds persisted, sometimes faint scratching, other times a soft thud. Emma heard them too and started sleeping with earplugs, saying she didn't want to get paranoid. I tried to do the same, but my curiosity wouldn't let me rest. One evening, I noticed a cold draft near the bookshelf. The window was closed, and the air conditioning was off. I ran my fingers along the edges and felt a subtle airflow coming from behind it. My heart raced as a wild thought crossed my mind. What if there really was something behind that bookshelf? I grabbed a screwdriver and started unscrewing the hooks that held it in place. They were old and flimsy, as if fastened in a hurry. With the last screw removed, I moved the bookshelf aside and froze. There was a door behind it, camouflaged perfectly with wallpaper to blend into the wall. It opened inward, into a narrow, pitch-black corridor. I stepped inside, the cold air wrapping around me. On the inside of the door, I saw small latches and hooks that matched those on the bookshelf. It was designed so that the bookshelf could be moved just enough to allow entry, then slid back into place without noise. Someone could enter this hidden corridor, closed the door behind them, and reattached the bookshelf from within. The passage ran along the walls, winding around the bedroom and part of the living room. It was cramped, barely wide enough to walk through, with walls that seemed to press in on me. As I followed its twisting path, I noticed small slits disguised as ventilation grills. I peeked through one and felt my blood run cold. I was looking into my own bedroom, the bed perfectly framed from above. A chill ran down my spine. Someone could watch us every night without us ever knowing. I moved on, more cautious now. Another slit revealed the bedroom door, capturing the entrance from an angle that covered the entire room. I realized that this passage wasn't just for observing, it was designed for surveillance. At the end of the corridor, I found a small room crammed with old belongings. A worn-out mattress lay on the floor, surrounded by empty cans and food wrappers. But what caught my attention was the camera on a tripod, pointed at one of the slits overlooking the bed. I turned on the camera, my hands trembling. The screen flickered to life, showing Emma and me asleep in bed, the angle capturing us from above. I scrubbed through the footage and saw countless nights recorded. It caught everything: our sleep, our conversations before bed, even the times we were intimate. But then the camera shook, and a hand appeared, adjusting the focus. I rewound and watched again. The camera wasn't just left there. Someone was operating it. My stomach churned as I fast-forwarded to the next clip. It showed the bedroom door through another slit. The door slowly opened, and a figure entered, moving soundlessly. He stood over our bed, watching us for what felt like an eternity. Then he leaned in, his face inches from mine as I slept, and whispered,
"You look so peaceful."
I knew that face. It was the landlord. My blood ran cold. I yanked the camera off the tripod, the cord snapping as I stumbled back. The thought of being watched, of being so vulnerable, it made my skin crawl. I didn't care about the rest of his hideout or whatever else he had in that twisted maze. I had to get out. I bolted down the corridor, my shoulder grazing the walls as I ran. I burst through the hidden door and shoved the bookshelf back into place, my fingers fumbling to screw it back in. I heard a noise from the hallway, a soft creak. My heart stopped. Was he here? Had he been watching me the whole time? I grabbed Emma, still groggy with sleep, and we fled. I didn't explain until we were halfway across town, parked outside a 24-hour diner with the engine still running. Her face went pale as I played the footage back. She covered her mouth, eyes wide with horror. We went to the police the next morning, handing over the camera. The evidence was undeniable. His face, his voice, his every movement caught on tape. There was no way he could talk his way out of it. The landlord was arrested that same day. He denied everything, claimed the footage was faked, but the hidden corridors and the viewing slits were impossible to explain. They found more tapes in his apartment, recordings of other tenants, people who had no idea they'd been watched. The police assured us he'd never get out, that he'd spend the rest of his life behind bars. But the relief didn't come. Even after moving out, after knowing he was locked away, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. I kept waking up at night, expecting to see him standing over me, whispering in that sickly sweet voice. Sometimes I still feel it, a cold draft, a faint rustling behind the walls. I know it's just my imagination. It has to be. But no matter where I go, I can't help but wonder, who's watching me now?